tried to begin, putting together a national energy strategy or policy at the beginning of the Bush administration. It eventually emerged largely misinterpreted because certain critics felt compelled to turn it into it was all about drilling and so on and so forth. It wasn't at all, but that was the predictable sort of reaction to anything that was going to come out of a Bush-Cheney White House. So as part of that, one of the centerpieces, in fact, of our discussion was the whole, just to take one area, the infrastructure piece. And it's interesting. I'll tell you an anecdote that kind of summarizes how I, where my head is on this concept of sort of a national strategy. I actually felt that as the issue came to interstate transmission, that we needed to have more federal authority. The federal government, is in charge of siting pipelines and approving them and other energy infrastructure. And I thought the transmission lines made more sense, just because we were foreseeing large bottlenecks emerging as demand for centers became more separated from production sources, particularly because of the down in my backyard philosophy that was causing more and more power to be developed or generated in remote locations, and also as more renewable power was being generated there, because that's better. The wind blows harder in those kind of places than it does in downtown LA or something. So as part of our deliberations, I was deployed. David, I don't know if you were with me on this particular mission, but I was sent out to the National Governors Association to give a speech in which I would sort of test the waters on the idea of some kind of federal siting authority. And never in the history of that organization has there ever been anyone who brought bipartisan agreement into play quicker than I did when I slightly suggested that there might be federal authority. I mean, whether you were Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives were like rushing the stage. I mean, I've never been ushered out of a meeting more quickly, than that one, like today, I wasn't near the door. I was at the other end. The crowd kind of got unruly. But it was, so we ended up with what became what we described as a sort of a modified version of that, in which the federal government would identify corridors that needed to be established. Because anytime you say we're going to build a transmission line, the immediate comments from people who don't want it is that it's going to go through schoolyards, hospitals, and nursing homes. I mean, it's as if the siting people only know 3 routes. So it's, if you can cover all 3, you'll do it. And I mean, those of you who live around here may remember there was a similar kind of fight not too long ago in Virginia, in which the Northern Virginia power demand had reached such a high level due to the population growth in the area, as well as the establishment of all these data centers, both serving the federal government, but also the many sort of high-tech companies that have established themselves around Dulles and so on. That just looking at the numbers, it was headed towards a very, very perilous situation. So the Virginia Dominion Power Company realized there was no chance in that area that they could ever get a power plant built, because there would be community resistance, because nobody ever wants a power plant except they want the power, that sort of thing. So they did have surplus power in West Virginia, and they simply sought to add an additional lines along the existing right-of-way to bring it down into Northern Virginia. And they met vehement opposition from environmental groups who, amusingly enough, in many cases, had either as their benefactors or in some instances even as their officers, the heads of the very same high-tech companies whose data centers were creating the demand. So, I mean, it is a really, difficult road to hoe. I therefore tend to not believe you can, I mean, even if it made sense, that it would ever be politically possible to truly have a national strategy. Now, that doesn't mean you can't, you know, try to develop a little bit more collaboration than we've had, because I do think there's some potential, you know, problems on the horizon. And if we do want to make a transition to an intelligent grid, it's going to take more collaboration. But I think it would be hard to get the states to agree to cede any authority here, or at least much.